I'm 54 years old. And if you told me 10 years ago that the little girl who once begged me to braid her hair for school would one day pretend I didn't exist at her wedding, I might have laughed in disbelief. But that's the funny thing about family. The people you give the most to often think they're entitled to even more. And sometimes they only see your value when the credit card declines. I met Sophia when she was just 9. Her mother, Rebecca, and I had both gone through difficult divorces. Hers a bit messier than mine. Her ex-husband, Michael, wasn't around much. He'd pop in twice a year, drop off a check, maybe take Sophia for an ice cream, then vanish again for 6 months. Meanwhile, Rebecca and I were building something stable, day by day, in Portland. I wasn't trying to replace anyone, but I was always there for the school plays, the scraped knees, the late-night math homework, the first heartbreak. I showed up even when it was inconvenient, especially when it was inconvenient. Over time, she started calling me Dad. It wasn't something I ever asked for. In fact, I told her early on that I'd never try to take that role unless she wanted me to. The day she looked up at me after her middle school graduation and said, "Thanks, Dad," I'll admit, I teared up. Rebecca squeezed my hand like she knew exactly what that meant to me. I paid for her braces, helped her get her first car. Nothing flashy, just a safe used Honda I'd saved up for. When she got into her dream college, I drove the U-Haul myself and stayed up 2 nights putting together IKEA furniture in her dorm. Every Christmas, birthday, and random Tuesday she forgot her umbrella, I was there. Not because I had to be, but because I loved her. But something shifted when she turned 20. It was subtle at first. The thank yous became more scarce. Her phone calls turned transactional. Then came her senior year, when Michael reappeared in a big way. He'd apparently turned over a new leaf. He started posting old photos of them together on Facebook, writing captions like, "So proud of my little girl," conveniently cropping Rebecca and me out of frame. Sophia ate it up like she was starving for his approval. I didn't blame her. Every kid wants to be wanted by their parent, even if that parent only shows up when it's convenient. Still, I couldn't help but feel pushed aside, like I'd been the substitute teacher all along. Then came the engagement. She was thrilled. I was genuinely happy for her at first. I remember sitting on the couch while she waved her hand in front of us, the diamond catching the light. Rebecca clapped, and I pulled her into a hug. "We're so proud of you," I said. Sophia smiled, but that smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she replied, "Thanks. I'm just glad I'll have both my parents there to walk me down the aisle." I blinked. Rebecca glanced at me and cleared her throat. "You mean," she began, but Sophia cut her off. "Of course I mean Dad," she said, meaning Michael. Not the man who taught her how to ride a bike or stayed up with her when she had the flu. Not me. I brushed it off at the time. Told myself it was just a phase, maybe a sentimental moment. She was reconnecting with her roots, trying to build a bridge. I could respect that. I could even step aside for it. But the signs kept piling up. She started referring to Michael as Dad exclusively again, and to me as Daniel whenever we were around other people. She removed my last name from her social media bios, which had once read Sophia Thompson, and reverted to her birth surname. She didn't ask me to give a speech. When I gently offered to help cover wedding costs, she smiled, nodded, and then asked if I could front the $12,000 for the venue deposit. No mention of reimbursement. No thank you. Just the assumption I'd handle it. I did. not for her, but because I knew Rebecca couldn't bear to see her daughter's big day fall apart. I told myself I wouldn't take it personally, that I was doing this for the family, for love. But as the months passed, I felt more like an ATM with legs than a father figure. Rebecca noticed too. She tried to talk to Sophia about it, gently, carefully, but Sophia would shut her down, accusing her of trying to guilt-trip me for wanting my real dad in my life. That word, real, stung more than I let on. The week before the wedding, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I had come home early from work and paused in the hallway when I heard Rebecca and Sophia talking in the kitchen. "He's paid for almost everything, Sophia," Rebecca said, her voice low but firm. "You can't just pretend he doesn't exist. He's been more of a father to you than Michael ever was." Sophia scoffed. "That's his choice. No one forced him to." "You used to call him Dad," Rebecca pressed. "That was before I had a real one again," she snapped. I walked back out the door before they knew I was there. I didn't say a word. I just drove until the gas light came on. The wedding day arrived, and I put on my best suit, tied my tie 3 times before I got the knot right. I showed up early, helped set up chairs, coordinated with the caterers, and made sure the sound system worked. Sophia barely acknowledged me when I passed her. Michael showed up late, wearing cologne so strong it could have cleared a room. She squealed and hugged him like a soldier returning from war. I stood back, watching it all, feeling like an extra in a movie I'd funded but wasn't allowed to star in. During the ceremony, I sat quietly next to Rebecca. When the officiant asked who was walking her down the aisle, Sophia looped her arm through Michael's and beamed. No mention of me. Not a glance. The reception was worse. The father-daughter dance was with Michael. The speech she gave thanked her mother, her wonderful new in-laws, and my incredible dad, Michael, who came back into my life at just the right moment. She never said my name. Not once. I didn't make a scene. I didn't leave. I smiled when people looked my way. I shook hands, toasted the couple, clapped during the dances. But inside something was unraveling. A quiet, slow burn. After the cake was cut and most of the guests had filtered out, I was standing by the back table collecting my jacket when Sophia approached me. She looked radiant and smug, the kind of tired that comes after a long day of being celebrated. She handed me a folded piece of paper. "The final balance," she said cheerfully, as if we were just settling a tab after lunch. "Thought you'd want to take care of it before we fly out tomorrow." I unfolded the paper. The number made my jaw tighten. I looked at her. She smiled, expecting me to nod, to reach for my wallet like always. I didn't. And that's when I turned and walked right past her, down the stairs, through the parking lot, and into the night without saying a single word. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry. That would have been easier. I didn't even feel hurt, exactly. What I felt was something colder, like a door had quietly shut somewhere deep inside me, and I didn't have the energy or the desire to ever open it again. I stared at the ceiling for hours, watching the shadows shift with the headlights passing outside my bedroom window. Rebecca came home late, clearly frazzled, clearly aware something had shifted. She tried to talk to me, but I told her gently, "Not tonight." I wasn't ready to say out loud what I knew was coming. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, messages from Rebecca, from Sophia, even from Michael, which surprised me since he had barely acknowledged me the whole weekend. I ignored them all. Instead, I made coffee, sat in my home office, and pulled out a thick binder labeled Wedding Expenses. Every receipt, every wire transfer, every invoice, all neatly categorized. It added up to just under $38,000. I had footed over 80% of the entire event, including the extravagant last-minute upgrades. Sophia just had to have imported centerpieces, a late-night taco bar, and that ridiculous champagne tower. And the kicker? That final balance she handed me. It wasn't an official bill. It was just a scribbled total she'd drawn up herself, including line items that had already been paid by me. In essence, she'd double-billed me, and she thought I'd be too spineless or too sentimental to call her on it. I spent that Sunday filing a dispute with the venue and every vendor I'd paid directly. I sent in the receipts, emails, and proof of payment. I froze the remaining portion of the wedding fund I had in a joint account with Rebecca, something I'd set up so she could make emergency purchases leading up to the wedding. I also sent Sophia a simple message. I will no longer be responsible for any part of your wedding costs moving forward. Any outstanding balance is between you and your biological father. Please direct future communication through your mother. Wishing you all the best in your new life. I didn't even sign it. Just hit send and turned off my phone. That night, Rebecca and I had the conversation. A real one? No more tiptoeing? She was heartbroken. Not just about Sophia, but about us. About how it had all played out. She admitted she'd noticed the shift in Sophia's behavior, but she was hoping it was just nerves or stress. I thought she'd come around, she said. I thought once she saw everything you did for her. She did see, I said quietly. She just didn't care. Rebecca didn't argue. The next few days were a whirlwind. Sophia sent a lengthy, self-pitying email, not to apologize, but to justify. She said she didn't mean to hurt my feelings, but it was her day, and she shouldn't have to pretend for anyone else's comfort. She also added that she thought I was being childish for walking out and abandoning my responsibilities, which was rich considering I'd been the only reason her wedding had even happened. I didn't respond. A week later, Michael called. That's right. The man who hadn't paid a dime toward the wedding, who had shown up late, danced, posed for photos, and left, now had the audacity to leave a voicemail saying, "Man to man, I think you overreacted. You know, girls and their dads, it's emotional. She needed me, and I stepped up. Don't punish her for choosing her real family." I sat there staring at my phone like it had grown fangs. He stepped up. Stepped up. I'd stepped up when Sophia was in the hospital at 13 with appendicitis, and Michael was too busy. I'd stepped up when her financial aid fell through sophomore year, and she was too embarrassed to tell anyone. I'd stepped up every day for a decade without ever asking for credit. But sure, Michael bought her a watch and stood beside her in a tux, and suddenly, he was Father of the Year. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make it clear I was done being used. I called the accountant who handled my personal finances and told him to begin dissolving the joint account. I updated my will. Sophia was no longer listed as a beneficiary. I made a sizable donation to a scholarship fund for foster youth. Kids who, unlike Sophia, actually needed support. Then I wrote a final letter to Rebecca. Not spiteful, not angry, just final. In it, I explained that I didn't blame her for what happened. not entirely. But I couldn't keep pouring myself into a family that only saw my worth in numbers and transactions. I told her I still cared for her and always would. But I needed to protect what little self-respect I had left. I left the letter on the kitchen counter and moved into a condo across town that I'd quietly purchased months earlier as a backup plan. I'd never thought I'd actually use it, but something in me had known. Maybe I was just waiting for a reason. Weeks passed, then a month. Rebecca tried to reach out a few times. Sophia didn't. I heard through a mutual friend that she and Michael had tried to take out a personal loan to cover the rest of the wedding costs, but were denied. Apparently, they were stunned that the wealthy stepdad had suddenly turned into a ghost. Then one afternoon, while I was at work, I got a message from Rebecca. "She's here. She wants to talk. Please, she's crying." I didn't reply right away. I sat at my desk, staring at the message, remembering every smile I'd given that girl. Every small moment of fatherhood I thought had meant something. Every dollar, every sleepless night, every proud look at graduation, every whispered, "Don't worry, I've got you." Then I stood up, packed my briefcase, and drove home. When I walked in, Sophia was sitting on the living room couch, hands clasped, eyes red. She stood when she saw me. "Daniel," she began. But I raised a hand. And what I said next, and what she did in response, changed everything. She opened her mouth again. But I stayed quiet, calm, controlled. I walked past her, set my briefcase down on the table like I'd just come home from an ordinary day at work, then turned and met her eyes. Really met them, not with anger, but with something firmer, something final. "You know," I said, "when you were 13, you begged me to come to your school's father-daughter breakfast because you didn't want to sit alone. You said Michael hadn't even texted in 6 months. I took the morning off, wore that awful blue tie you liked, and brought your favorite muffins. You held my arm and told everyone I was your dad." Sophia blinked, lips pressed into a tight line, her cheeks flushed. From embarrassment or shame, I couldn't tell. "You remember that?" she asked quietly. "I remember everything, Sophia, because I was there for everything. And I wasn't keeping score. Not then. But apparently, someone was." She looked down at her hands, twisting her fingers. "I messed up," she said. "I know I did. I was trying to, I don't know, make peace with things. Michael wanted to be more involved. I didn't think it would hurt you like that." I tilted my head. "Didn't think? Or didn't care?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "What's not fair?" I cut in, my voice low but unwavering. "Is that you made me pay for a seat at a table I was never really invited to. You walked past me again and again, and each time I told myself to let it go. I sat there through every slight, every omission, every erasure of 10 years of my life, and still I paid for the napkins." That last sentence caught her off guard. She looked up, confused. "Napkins?" "Custom monogrammed napkins," I said, almost laughing at the absurdity. $472 for linen with your new last name, the one I'm not part of. Silence. "I didn't mean for it to be like this," she murmured. I got caught up in the idea of finally having my real dad around." "I thought I'd just take it," I interrupted, but softer now. Like always. Rebecca stepped out of the hallway then, eyes red. She must have been listening. She didn't say anything, but Sophia turned to her like a lifeline. "Mom, tell him?" But Rebecca just shook her head slowly. "No, Sophia. Not this time." Sophia looked between us, realizing perhaps for the first time that she wasn't going to be rescued by sentiment or guilt. The ground beneath her was shifting, and she didn't know how to steady herself. "I didn't expect you to just disappear," she said, voice cracking. "I didn't disappear," I replied. "I just stopped showing up for people who treat me like a utility. You made a choice at your wedding. I'm making one now." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing rise in response. Not pity, not satisfaction, just stillness. "I came to apologize," she said. "To fix things." "No," I said. "You came to stop the fallout. That's not the same." She sat down suddenly, deflated. "So that's it? You're just done?" I looked at her for a long moment. "I don't know," I admitted. "But what I do know is that forgiveness can't be demanded after a silence like that. It has to be earned, and that's not something I can hand out like another check." Her shoulders dropped, and for the first time, she didn't argue, didn't protest, or try to explain. She just sat there, surrounded by the wreckage of a relationship she hadn't even realized she'd demolished until it was too late. I gathered my things, nodded once to Rebecca, and headed for the door. Just as I reached it, Sophia called out behind me, voice trembling. "What do I have to do to fix this?" I paused, hand on the doorknob, not looking back. "You start by not asking me to tell you," I said. Then I walked out. I didn't go far, just around the block to breathe, to clear my head. I wasn't sure if I was done forever, but I was sure I was done being taken for granted. And what happened in the days that followed? Well, that's when things got real. The next morning, my phone stayed silent. No messages, no missed calls, no apologies, just an empty inbox and a strange kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. And despite everything, I still checked. Not because I hoped she'd grovel, but because I needed to know if she'd really let this go without a fight. She did. For 3 days, there was nothing. Rebecca texted once a simple, "I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I wasn't angry at her. Not really. But I needed space. For years, I'd been the foundation everyone built their lives on. And now that I'd stepped away, the cracks were showing. I was done being the steady background character. I wanted to see if anyone remembered who'd been holding the camera the whole time. On the 4th day, I got a knock at my office door. Not the condo, my actual office where I ran my consultancy business. My assistant buzzed in, sounding a little uneasy. "There's a young woman here, says her name's Sophia. She doesn't have an appointment." I paused. My first instinct was to tell her to send Sophia away, but something about the way my assistant said her name made me curious. Tired, maybe, or nervous. "Send her in," I said. Sophia walked in, not with the arrogance she used to carry like perfume, but slowly, like someone walking into a church or a hospital room. Her hair was tied back, her makeup minimal, no designer purse, no smug smile, just her and a thin folder tucked under her arm. She sat across from me and opened the folder without saying a word. Inside was a collection of receipts, bank statements, payment breakdowns, a typed letter, neatly formatted, with a heading that read, "Wedding Expense, Reconciliation, Report." She slid it across the table to me. "I went through everything," she said quietly. "Every vendor, every transfer, every line item. I called the venue, the caterer, even the florist. I made a list of what you paid and what I owe you. I added interest, and I broke it into a repayment plan over 3 years. If you agree to the terms, I'll sign it." I blinked. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She was just sitting there doing the one thing I hadn't expected, taking accountability. "I got your message," she said, and I hated it. At first, I thought you were being dramatic, even petty. But then I started thinking about it. Not from my point of view, but yours. I remember the time you drove 6 hours back from a business trip because I forgot my college essay was due and I needed help proofreading. You sat with me until 2 hours in the morning, then left at 5 to make it to a meeting in another state. You didn't even bring it up again. You just did it. She looked down at her hands. I thought about the birthday party I had when I was 16, the one where Michael said he'd come but never showed. You drove around town trying to find the last copy of that out-of-print book series I loved and gave it to me like it was no big deal. And I hugged you. I really hugged you, because in that moment I didn't miss him at all. Her voice shook, but she steadied it. I remembered all of it, and the more I remembered, the worse I felt. Because I realized I didn't just erase you from the wedding, I erased you from my story, like you were a placeholder, until the real Dad showed up. She finally met my eyes. But you were never a placeholder. You were the only one who stayed. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat had tightened, and I wasn't sure I trusted my voice just yet. I'm not asking you to forgive me today, she said, but I wanted you to know that I see it now, all of it, and I'm going to make it right. Not with words, with time, with action. I opened the folder. The numbers were accurate. The plan was fair. She'd even included a clause that said, if she missed more than 2 payments in a row, the debt would become due in full. It wasn't about the money. Never had been. But she knew that, and that's why this mattered. After a long moment, I nodded. All right, I said. Let's see how serious you are. She exhaled, not with relief, but something deeper. Resolve, maybe. That was 6 months ago. Since then, she's made every payment on time. Small at first, $150 here, $200 there, but consistent. More than that, she's shown up. She calls once a week. She invited me to dinner with her and her husband, just the 3 of us. No grand speeches, no forced apologies, just a chance to talk, to laugh, to start over. Rebecca and I had our own journey, too. We didn't get back together. Not right away. We took some space. And in that space, we talked more honestly than we had in years. We're seeing each other again now, carefully, slowly, like 2 people learning how to trust, with their eyes open. Sophia asked me last week if I'd consider being a part of her child's life. She's pregnant, due in a few months. Her voice shook when she asked, like she expected me to say no. I didn't. I told her I'd think about it. And then I smiled. I've got a lot of good bedtime stories stocked up, she cried. Happy tears this time. We're not perfect. There are still scars. But scars mean healing, not forgetting. And now, for the first time in a long time, I don't feel invisible. I feel seen. Not for what I gave, but for who I was, who I am. And sometimes that's the most powerful revenge of all. Not the silent exit, not the cold goodbye, but becoming someone they can no longer ignore. Because in the end, I didn't walk out to make them feel guilty. I walked out to remind myself that I still mattered. And now they know it too.